Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how I do my eyebrows and maybe a little bit of makeup. But first, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment for more. Love you guys. So let's talk about communication. Communication is really important in all areas of your life, right? And that means in work, in relationship, in family, friend relationships, and acquaintances, right? Because if you're just communicating with someone and all you're doing is just listening to just respond, listening to respond, you're not getting an understanding as to where that other person is coming from. And then how could you ever call yourself or consider yourself an active listener, right? So it's important to try to, one, comprehend what the other person is trying to say, what their message is trying to convey, and learn how to deal with the ego. That's all for a whole nother conversation. But we're talking about communication. The ego does play a big factor in that as well, right? But if you want to try to continue, you have to tell yourself, right? The main focus or the goal of this conversation is so that way we can clear up whatever miscommunication is happening, mend whatever issues has been taking place, try to fix the problem so that way we don't continue to stay in this problem. But then when we're stuck and we're only trying to get constant validation, what type of conversation are we having here? Am I having a conversation specifically to validate your feelings, or are we having a conversation to move forward, right? And then it's not about blaming people. It's not about constantly pointing fingers. It's about providing a clear understanding to the other party as to what it is that you're feeling, why is it that you responded the way that you responded, whatever, the issue was. But if we're only focused on just trying to get our point across and trying to get validation, we're always going to have issues. We're never going to be effective communicators. We're never going to be able to have, just peace in general. Because now what's happening is, no, everybody that's around us is always going to be like, all right, well, I got to walk on eggs and pins and eggs, whatever you call it, shells, just so that way this individual doesn't feel like I'm attacking them. And it's not fair to the other people around you. It's not fair to the people that care about you. It's not fair to the people that want to be in your life. So you, as an individual, have to say and ask yourself, do I want to continue to build a relationship or a foundation with this individual? And if so, how can we move forward? How can we move forward? Because that's the main thing. How can we move forward? And that's if you want to continue to have this person in your life. Because a lot of the times people get so caught up on, oh, I just want to be able to communicate or whatever. I want my feelings validated. And guess what? The world does not revolve around you, right? And I have a thing that I say, like to my little sister, I be like, my world don't revolve around you at all. So you could continue to act like you're not playing a vital role in your own pain and suffering, or you can take accountability for the parts that you play in your life and make better changes. We want to embrace being ourselves 24/7. We want to embrace allowing ourselves to be who we are. But when is change called for? I personally believe change is called for when you're constantly having arguments, or you're constantly having miscommunications, or there's always an issue and you seem to be the main factor in that. And I can honestly say this because I've been a person who I feel I have definitely played a vital role in my own suffering, right? Because I've held certain people on pedestals that they did not deserve. I viewed people on a certain way because of the love that I had for them. I assumed that it would be reciprocated, and it's usually not, right? Because people sometimes will take advantage of that. But you, as an individual, have to be able to say, all right, have discernment. That's the most important thing. Being able to have discernment, to know that certain things, certain people, certain places is just not for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with it. So, for me, I would say the past couple years has been constant revelations. A lot of people who I held on pedestals, family members, friends, and I thought that this was a person that was so important to me that I loved and they loved me. I realized a lot of the messed up things that was happening in my life was because one, I'm so loyal to a default to these people that does not deserve my loyalty. So now I'm stressed out because I'm trying to be there for them. And then you have yourself where you're trying so hard to cling on to something and it's not really worth clinging on to because we're afraid of the unknown. Or we feel like someone owes us something. And no one owes us anything. We don't even owe anything to our older selves or our younger selves. You understand what I'm saying? The only ones we owe something to is our present moment. Because all we have is the pain, trauma, suffering, or whatever it was from that, oh man, from that time in our lives that remains very much present. But what are we going to do? Allow ourselves to stay in this negative place and not grow? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So, at some point, we have to make the decision to say, you know what? I no longer want to be a part of my own suffering. Like, I don't. I really genuinely do not. So, what does that look like? What is it that I need to do moving forward so that way I'm not a part of my own suffering in this life? Because we only got one life to live. So we might as well do it right, live it right, and enjoy every living moment that we can. So now, back to communication. When we're communicating, right, and a person says something that we don't particularly like or don't necessarily agree with, it's not to get upset, it's not to take it and run with it, it's not to try to cause the conversation to go back all on you, right? It is to take note of it, to say, okay, I'll hear you, and I validate that, but I just need you, one, either to clarify what you mean, or two, I don't necessarily agree, but that is your feelings. And you're 100% entitled to that. That doesn't necessarily make it a fact, though. That's the biggest problem. Like, I feel like that's one thing that I've learned from Michael B. Beckwith is that no one, no one owes you anything. That's one. Two, there is no such thing. There's no such thing as an opinion being a fact. There's no such thing as an opinion being a fact. Because that's exactly what it is. Just an opinion. There's nothing more to it, nothing less. And if you allow yourself to fester and take someone's opinion and make that a fact in your life, who do you have to blame for that? You. Obviously, being around some individuals like a narcissist, because I was around a narcissist, which is unfortunately the person that I'm supposed to be calling a father, but I was around a narcissist for my entire life. And obviously, it wasn't until I became more involved in my spiritual journey where I started to learn a lot more about communication is one of the most hardest and vital things that we have as human beings. And a lot of the times, we as human beings deliberately choose to cause havoc because we just simply don't want to put our egos to the side and communicate. If we feel some type of way about something, we don't communicate, we keep it to ourselves, which is recipe for disaster, I personally feel. If we're not allowing ourselves to grow, we're actively making the choice to suffer. So I personally have made the choice to not be a part of my own suffering. So you also, as an individual, should know that you don't want to suffer. I know I personally don't. And we have to literally be 110, even maybe a fucking 1,000, maybe even, honest with ourselves about how much we contribute to our own suffering. What does that look like? Does it look like holding on to people who don't necessarily need to be in our lives or even don't want to be in our lives? Does it look like starting arguments with individuals that you know will never be able to receive your communication? Because a lot of the times, like Monique said, it's not the message, it's the messenger. So you won't receive it coming from me, right? Because you don't feel like whatever issues you may have about me. And that causes problems. So you just have to have discernment for yourself to say, okay, these are the type of people that should be in my life. These are the type of people that I don't necessarily want in my life because I'm not necessarily happy anymore. I'm not necessarily thriving. I'm not necessarily feeling good about this relationship. Every time I talk to you, I have to pick myself up. One of my good friends said that to me one time. She said, like, if I'm in a relationship and if I gotta pick myself up every time we're around each other, then what is that for? What's the point of us being together if I gotta pick myself up every single time? Like, I don't want to be around and deal with anyone who is not able to be emotionally mature enough to validate when validation is needed, to take accountability when accountability is needed. That means you don't care to have me in your life, and that therefore I shouldn't necessarily care to have you in my life, right? So it's important for us to literally decide today, moving forward, that I don't want to be a part of my own suffering. Simple. And I made that choice. So this is my everyday look. Very simple. Keep it pushing. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys.